I create a psychologically safe space so you can bravely learn. You don't have to beat people down to teach them something.
Do you want your writing to teach and inspire? Are you looking for ways to expand the content you currently offer readers? It might be time to consider building a curriculum for your audience. Hi, I'm Clarissa Moll, and welcome to The Writerly Life, brought to you by Hope Writers, the most encouraging place on the internet for writers to make progress. Here at The Writerly Life, we help you expand your creativity, explore new techniques, and express your hope-filled words in a world that needs them. We'll help you learn to balance the art of writing with the business of publishing, and learn to hustle without losing heart. You have words, and your words matter. And as you write them, you can be you, boldly, bravely, maybe even a little scared sometimes. You can be you in your writing life. Welcome to the show, friends. Lean in, grab a pen, let's chat. Whether your day job is teaching or you're looking for new ways to reach your reader, building a curriculum might be a good next step in your writing life. Curriculum offers readers tangible, interactive ways to engage with your content, and often your teaching or courses can be monetized for additional income. However you choose to use your curriculum, your reader will benefit from your thoughtful organization, your solid research, and your hope-filled guidance. Our guest today, author and educator Dr. Lucretia Berry, tackles the tough subject of racial healing in the curriculum that she developed. Dr. Berry understands that teaching must be well-informed as well as winsome, and she seeks to do both as she draws learners into conversations about important topics relating to race. How does she design a curriculum that connects so deeply with readers? Lean in as Lucretia tells us more in this Hope Writers Tuesday teaching with host Emily P. Freeman.
For my dissertation, for my doctorate, I actually wrote about, opportunities and challenges for like multicultural or anti-racism education and computer-mediated communication. So back then it wasn't called social media. It was just like this, like talking, and connecting through the computer, but having access to people that you would not have access to locally and geographically. So I actually wrote about the stuff that I'm seeing. It's kind of crazy. Right. So yeah, there's great opportunities to connect, right? And to like-minded people, but there's also this thing that happens on social media where it's like a, truly democratic environment where everybody's voice is on the same level. So then people who maybe they just started noticing race and racism yesterday, literally like woke up and like, oh, here's this thing on the news. I want to talk about that on social media very loudly. And so it drowns out, the people who are like, well, the people who are immersed in, the research and can be very helpful. So for me, I feel very fortunate again to have connection to like the good academic stuff. And even, personal stories are amazing, but they are even more powerful when they're framed in the context of history, right? Mm-hmm. And so then coming, out of academia, I'm, wanting to then, bridge people to the kind of learning that it is required for us to really understand this. So how I shift into writing is really me writing down my teaching. So, I'm trying to support the learning process. So as an educator, like I know how people learn, and I know how the brain needs to be rewired and kind of what that takes. And like, I think most people don't know there's a thing like y'all educators, like it's called pedagogy. Like it's a science. It's like,
tell us,
we're not just making this stuff up here. Here's some random questions. Like, no, it's all like, researched and intentional and strategic to help people. So initially I created like a pamphlet, like literally like here's a pamphlet or a little packet to go into my little, church or whoever wants me to come teach. And then more people were requesting. So I'm like, well, let me write it down, let me write this stuff down. And that is really how I slid into writing in that way. Like I've always kind of written poetry, I'll say that. But writing in this way, like where I'm teaching through my writing, came that way. Like, let me somehow express the pedagogy through my writing in a way that I'm going to use my father-in-law, for example. You know, he was saying, come here back to Iowa and teach this. And I'm like, no, we live here now, Dad, you know, so I will write this down. Right. And then, you know, and then I talk about this where, you know, Brian Dixon did a summer challenge to self-publish, you know, and he explained the beauty of self-publishing. And so I'm like, and it all happened. And I said, okay, I'll just self-publish this because I just need the people in my little class to have this material, this journal, this guide, this guided instruction. And so then I self-published and to meet the challenge. And that's kind of,
and that was this.
That was that. Yeah. It wasn't the third edition. It was the first.
Okay, because this is the third edition.
That's the third, yeah.
I see it, third edition right there.
Yes, because the first one, I had so many typos because I literally was trying to make the challenge, and I didn't know how to do have an editor and a graph. I didn't know how to do all that stuff.
You got it out there.
I met the challenge, and then just the next year, you know, I upgraded it as a teacher would do their syllabus or curriculum, and then I think the last time I upgraded was 2018. So it's due for another upgrade, but that's how I slid, I call it, I get slid in sideways.
Right. Well, so many things that you've said there. And I want to point out one place where I think a lot of our writers are, which is they're doing some work. Like you were doing this work in as you said, your little classes, you know, you've got your people in front of you that you're serving, that you're teaching. But then you had someone far away, even though it was a father-in-law, someone far away who wanted access. And you're like, I'm not going to Iowa, but how can I make it possible to where the thing I'm doing here locally can also be accessible to the thing they're doing there? And I don't have to leave my house. And I think that's the dream, right? Is that as writers, we'd be able to create some things that would move beyond us, that would, you know, that we can leave behind. And so I love that. Again, we talk about this in Hope Writers, which I'm sure you know, but it's not that we look to the world and say, what kind of book can I write? It's that we're looking at the work that we're called to.
Right.
And then we say, what does the work require for me right now? And you didn't write this a second sooner than you needed it. But, and I love the fact, by the way, P.S., that you did it and then you found typos and you're just like, we're just going to have a second edition. We're just going to make a third edition. There's no like, oh no, I've ruined it, or a typo. Woe is me. And you're like a legit teacher. So that should really bother you, but it didn't. You just move forward.
It did, but it was actually, this is funny, y'all. One of the very first people to leave a review, that's what they wrote. So many typos that this isn't credible. But whatever. Like, I know we could just get those typos fixed and keep on going. So we just keep going. And you know, to today, my father-in-law teaches What Lies Between Us all over Iowa. I think he's taught it more than I have.
No way.
I know. I'm like, dude, what? Because he's a pastor and people trust him, you know?
Yeah.
And so they're like, come teach this here. Come teach this. He has the most incredible stories. And so he just wrote a book too about his journey and taking this class. And now, like, how about that?
So your book has birthed other books. Now that's something right there. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of creating this curriculum, we have other Hope Writers here. We don't have a ton of resources for like curriculum creation and Hope Writers, but we're about to give some information for that right now, because I'm going to ask Dr. Berry, y'all, because we had Tiffany who said, and she's speaking to the teacher in you. She says, what are 3 things that you would say, so this is 1, 2, 3, to someone who's in the early stages of developing a curriculum? Is there a particular tool you would prefer formatting in your curriculum? What platform are you using to host your membership site? So she's asking, like, you know, some kind of nuts and bolts, or even if you have a mindset type of, you know, perspective for someone who wants to create a curriculum, but is maybe just getting started.
Okay, great. So if this person, I don't know if is she a teacher? I don't know. But I mean, I didn't worry about the formatting of it. I just, I pulled together and kind of curated the experience. So that's what I say. I love and I am passionate about cultivating learning experiences. So that's what drove, how my curriculum was laid out.
Yeah.
And the look I didn't worry about so much. Somebody helped me or somebody designed the cover. I'm like, I like simple, just simple block or whatever. And then the editor, the graphic designer, is it right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then they kind of pull the elements throughout the whole book. But I, did kind of my pattern of, I want this learning element, I want this journaling element, and a reflective, introspective element, and a reaching forward element. So whatever, and that's with anything, like what is the objective for my learner? And then I work, backwards from there. And so, and then, just in last fall, we launched a the online or membership, and we use our learning management system is Thinkific, and that was, one of our volunteers just researched and said, I think this one. But there's also Teachable, and there's others.
Yeah, there's lots of different ones.
So I think you said like 5 things.
Okay.
So you came up with an objective for your learner, and you had to, because as a teacher, you got to know.
That's right.
And then you figured out what elements you wanted in your curriculum. So you said you had tell us again, your reflective element.
So like the actual educational content. So the instruction, and then I have a reflective one. I'll just leave it at that. Reflecting.
Yes.
Then a call to action. There we go.
There it is.
Things. Yeah.
That's good. So those 3 elements, good. And then a third thing that you said, which someone mentioned in the comments, and I think is not to be overlooked, is that you didn't stress about the parts that were not your zone of genius. You just delegated those out. Graphic designer, you had a friend who picked the platform for you. Just kind of, okay, I'll do what you say, person. I trust you. And just having a way to get that out and not kind of worrying about, having it be perfect.
Yeah, I stay in my lane, and I have to do I do. Yes. And I have to do the thing that brings me joy, right? So if I had to do figure out how to do the graphic design and do all of that and figure out what learning management system and all of the things, like I would be miserable. And especially because my content is around, anti-racism, I really have to stick to like what is life-giving. Otherwise, I would really get burnt out and, not want to do the work. So the teaching part gives me life. That's life-giving to me. And I've had people on my team who are really bright people, like brilliant people. And they say, how have you figured out like this formula? Like, how did you do that? And I wish I could say, but, as I've learned from Gary, it's my zone of genius.
I appreciate Lucretia's thoughtful approach to her content. She goes on to say that self-care is baked right into every piece of curriculum that she writes. Lucretia understands that a sustainable writing life is one where we thoughtfully engage our reader from our own full well of wisdom and rest. When we're feeling tense or worried about our words, we can struggle to maintain focus or stay committed to our work. When writer Felicity Hayes McCoy senses a block in her focus while writing, she checks in with her body by asking herself, what are my toes doing? If she discovers her toes are tense or clenched, she realizes she's writing from a place of stress instead of freedom. Like Felicity, a tense body can mean that you're too focused on the need to get it right. But writing isn't always about trying harder or trying to reach perfection. Instead, Felicity recommends writers try taking a softer approach. Consider these 3 ways you can add a generous spirit to your work and care for your heart as you write your words that will teach and inspire others. Number 1, be generous with yourself. Taking a softer approach with yourself as a writer is an act of generosity to your inner artist. Being kind to ourselves allows us to approach ourselves and our work with reverence, by eliminating the pressure we may feel as we write. As we grow in our craft, we may allow fear, envy, competition, or a fixed mindset to dominate our thoughts, leading to circumstances in which we find it difficult to create. When we stop focusing on the hard and fast rules of writing, we give ourselves permission to find the ways in which we work best. We unclench our bodies and our brains, and we allow the messages we want to share to take center stage. Number 2, be generous with the work. When author and Hope Writers co-founder Emily P. Freeman began to flesh out ideas around the topic of decision-making, she believed the idea would be born in book form. Emily wrestled with the work for some time, initially thinking that the words were meant for readers. When she couldn't wrangle the words into chapters, she gave herself permission to consider a different format. When Emily was generous with herself and her work by putting aside what she should do as an author, she realized the words weren't meant for pages. They were meant for a podcast. Her podcast is the result of taking a generous approach to herself, her ideas, and the people who would engage with them by eliminating what should be and asking what could be instead. Number 3, be generous with the reader. When you extend generosity to yourself as a content creator, you're then able to serve your reader in more authentic and generous ways. Once we serve ourselves and the work, our responsibility naturally shifts to the reader. How are we generous with our readers? Well, Felicity suggests we ask more than we tell our audience, particularly on social media. The generous writer is responsible for completing the work, noting their own response to it, and inviting readers into conversation with it. When readers respond to our generosity by engaging with our words, it completes the circle of creativity. All good curriculum, like all good writing, is learner or reader focused. You want to keep your reader in mind at every stage of the writing process. When a reader can process and use the words you've written, your impact expands and your words can reach audiences you never imagined. Let's listen one more time as Dr. Lucretia Berry describes this.
I want to be full and whole for the people who want to learn. So although I love the people who don't necessarily who are not yet at a place of learning, like I still love them, but they're just not like, I can't like give to that. Like I can't just empty out myself for that. Cause then I have nothing left for the people who are the fertile ground, so it's that whole like, so into fertile ground. And, I've been learning about yards lately because we live in a very rural-ish kind of place. And so it's lots of weeds. So it's less about plucking weeds and more about feeding the grass. So if you feed the grass that you want, that chokes out the weeds, even though choking sounds violent, but you know what I mean.
We got you. It's a gardening analogy.
Yes.
So when you, for example, and the question is, and by the way, the asker of the question was a Black writer, so that applies. Further question from that, and we'll wrap up here in a minute and find where we can find you and everything. But further question is when you're talking about social media. So for example, maybe what you're saying is maybe social media is not the healthy learning environment. So in that case, because I know you kind of limit your time in social media from what I've learned of you and what I know, and I think that's probably wise. But for people who are, maybe they have chosen, okay, I'm going to step into the role as teacher, and some parts of where I teach is in maybe social spaces, you're going to get both the fertile ground learners and you're going to get the other who are maybe debating. And so would you say that's just not your lane? Or would you say maybe I think there's just some discernment, right? That you have to figure out where your lines are.
Okay. So I think again about a teacher and cultivating a classroom, right? Yeah. So I'm sorry, like my hair is like doing it. So anyway, so for example, on our Facebook page, Brownicity Facebook page is like open and public, so is Instagram. And that's where we'll get, so people who are like, oh, I want like resources that I can trust. So that's what we funnel through, let's just say our Facebook page. Sure. Well, every now and then, we get a troll or someone who comes on there and then just makes it a scary place. So what we do is I'll say some people on my team, I'll say, okay, maybe you can help Sally, I don't know, can you help her maybe with some resources? And then sometimes, if a Sally might say, oh, okay, now I understand. So wonderful. But then if the person is like, no, y'all are, divisive and horrible people, then we just have to, delete her out, because by design, social media is an echo chamber, right? You follow and like the people that are like you, that you want to, and likewise. So then I have to think about how I'm going to use that tool. And I know in the past, I haven't used social media a lot to teach. And I do plan on shifting a little bit with the Brownicity,
platforms.
Thank you. Yes. To put more teaching there. Because yes, you like the people I follow, like just say I'll follow these activists or anti-racism educators. And so, but you're like talking to me who I already know this stuff. So I'm really following you just for affirmation. Right. And and that's the case for a lot of resources. Like it's for people who are already on the journey. But I'm like, if you're saying that, like the people that need to hear, some of the stuff you're saying, like they're not following you. Mm-hmm. You see, so again, it's an echo chamber of you follow who you like and such. So if you want to, so what I try to do and what we try to do is, okay, if we focus on giving people this capacity, then let's say, Emily, if I build you and give you language framework and, and some confidence and say, you can do this, then you will go reach like tons of people who would never come to my social media, platform. Right. So then it, has a better, stronger, longer, more outreaching impact.
Yes. If this episode was helpful to you, just imagine how helpful the entire hour-long interview with Dr. Lucretia Berry would be. Every week, Hope Writers members have access to a new 1-hour Tuesday teaching with agents, publishers, social media strategists, and authors like Dr. Berry. Hope Writers helps you make progress in your writing life, whether you're writing blogs or articles, on social media, or in a book. If you want to be serious about your words and your reader, we're here for you. For writing tips and encouragement, find us on Instagram at Hope Writers or at our public Facebook page, Hope Writers Community. Last, a final word from poet W.B. Yeats. Education is not the filling of a pot, but the lighting of a fire. As you write curriculum or develop supplementary materials for your reader, you too are lighting a fire with your words. Your writing will warm the hearts of those who need to read it, and your message will light the way for readers in need of your words of hope. Whatever way you teach your audience, know that your writing is a powerful force. That message inside you is a flame worth nurturing. Thanks for listening, writer friend. As you step into this week, remember to keep writing. Your words matter, and we can't wait to read them. If you found this episode of The Writerly Life helpful, be sure to hit subscribe and tell your friends. Rate and review the show and like and comment if you're tuning in on YouTube. Your reviews help others know that you found the content helpful. See you next week.